Hello campers, Paul from Fiesta Adventures here. Today we're going to talk about building a sleeping platform for your SUV. Now this right here happens to be my vehicle, which is a 2016 Generation 4 Subaru Forester. The problems that we have in sleeping in the back of a SUV are similar for most of the makes and models, and that is that the back part of the cargo area is flat, but when the seats are folded down, there's either a hump up or both a hump up and a slant up, which is what I have in my case. So what we're going to do is build two rails that compensate for that difference, creating a flat platform and then putting plywood on top of that. The other issue is that depending on the size of yourself and the size of your SUV, it may not be quite long enough. So you're going to have to extend the platform forward and push your passenger seat forward and or tilt it forward. In my case, I'm 5'10" on a good day. My space inside my Subaru is exactly 5'10". And I would recommend that you make your platform, I don't know what the magic number is, but say 4 to 6 inches taller than you are, just to give you enough room so you can point your toes down and lie flat without, being up against anything. So I'm going to need to push my seat forward and tilt it forward a little bit when the bed is deployed. And my plan is, and this is only because I prefer to have my passenger seat in the normal position when I'm driving, which will enable me to carry a passenger, A, and B, it just is aesthetically it's better in my book. So the front part of my sleeping platform is going to have a piano hinge, so when it's not deployed I can flip it over and then move the passenger seat back into its normal position. I have a split seat, it's 2/3, 1/3, and the wider side is a little more than 24 inches. That should be enough to sleep on. Now I should point out that if you plan to move into your car permanently, then you're probably going to want to completely remove your rear seat and then build a flat platform, and then you'll be able to have a lot of storage underneath it where the seat used to be, and you can have a hatch in your platform so that you can lift that out, and then you have put bins below or whatever you want to do. If you want to go more extreme, you can even remove your front seat, and that works well if you have a really tiny car. But for me, I'm just going camping on weekends and camping trips, and I want to keep my seats in the car, all of them, so this particular video is going to be about that application. Okay, so the first order of business is we need to figure out if a 2x4 is going to be tall enough to compensate for the rise in the back of the car. So what I've done here is I've set up a 2x4, place it on the front of the seat, and at the back here I have put a level and put a piece of 2x4 under the level to see if it's enough to make it level. And what I discovered is that I need a little shim of about 3/4 inches to make it absolutely level. So what that means is my head is going to be, if I just use the 2x4, my head is going to be about 3/4 inches higher than my feet, which is fine. It's probably perfect. If I wanted it to be exactly level, then I could just shim under the 2x4 a little bit to make up the difference. Now, if you do this on your SUV and it's more than 4 or 5 inches, you might want to consider using a 2x6 or shimming up this back end of it just a little bit to compensate for that difference. As you can see, the level's just about perfect with a 3/4 or so inch shim under the 2x4, which I've just dummied up to see the difference. So when I trim the front end of this 2x4 down to about 0, then my thickness here is going to be one full 2x4 width, which is then going to be this part right here. Now you're not going to need a whole lot of tools to do this job. I think just some sort of power saw. It could be a skill saw or a jigsaw or a sawzall, because we're just going to need to trim that lengthwise, 2 of them, lengthwise 2x4s to the contour of the cargo area to make it flat. Now we're on to the cutting of the longitudinal supports for the bed. I've actually got one cut already, and what I've decided to do is this end here, I needed the full width of the 2x4 to compensate for the raise in the back seat area, but that would mean that this would go down to, like, this end here would be like to paper thin, which I didn't want. So I left this to be 3/4 of an inch thick, and that means this end, the far end, is going to be a little bit low, but what I'm going to do is shim that up, and that's going to give me a little more raise in the back. And now I'm thinking what I'm going to do is put in a sliding drawer back there, if I can pull that off, underneath the back part of the bed, which I can pull out to be below the rear hatch, and that'll be a place where I can use it as a table or maybe put my cook stove on there. So I've got the one cut now, and what I'm going to do is just take a pencil here and then just draw the second one so it matches the first one. And I'm cutting this on a bandsaw. This is not really the right tool for this, but I'm just making it work because that's what I have available to me. So, but any kind of saw should work. Okay, so now I've got the two supports cut. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to sand them. I've clamped them together so that they're identical, and then they're pretty close, but I'm just going to sand them to make them absolutely identical and take off some of the rough edges. Just sort of the perfectionist in me. This step is not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. So the next thing is to figure out how much shim I need to get them back to level. And what I've discovered is it's just about the width of a 2x4, so that's about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to cut some shims using the part that I cut off the other end there to make some shims that'll go under here, and that'll bring this thing back to level, and that will give me about almost 6 inches here for what will potentially be my drawer pull-out under the bed. So we'll see how that works out. Okay, now you can see that I've got the shim mounted onto the 2x4, so that'll get the bed nice and level. I didn't make it very long because I discovered that actually the very back part of my Subaru does slant up a little bit, so it was best to keep this relatively short. So I decided to glue it. Once the glue dries, I'll put it in the car and then see if I'm all good. Okay, so now I've laid my plywood on my longitudinal supports to check it out and see how it looks. The fact that the back of the car curves around means I'm going to have to trim off that corner a little bit, but that's good. Pre-drilled my holes in the plywood for the screws that's going to attach it to the longitudinal supports, and I've also countersunk those, and I'm going to use construction screws that are about, I think they're 1 5/8 number 8 by 1 5/8, and those should work well for that, spaced out every 6 inches. My plywood happens to be 1/2 inch. This idea for the front piece that flips over looks like that's going to work out pretty well. You don't have to use finished grade plywood. You could just use some rough plywood, construction plywood, and that's fine. And a lot of people like to put carpet scraps down, and I think I'm not going to do that just because I want to keep it as light as possible so when I move it in and out. Also keep in mind, if you get a full sheet, you can make, and your car's a little bigger than this one, you can make it wider than 24 inches if you want. You could even make it wide enough for 2 people. So this is the front piece that's going to, you can see that my passenger seat is pushed forward and tilted forward. So this part of the bed is going to have a hinge on it, and then it's going to flip over like this, and then that will allow me to move the front seat back. Okay, so all that went super quick. I was surprised. It took about 15 minutes to get the thing screwed down. That went really easy. Everything fits just fine. I am going to have to trim the hinged part a little bit because it just barely touches the driver's seat. But other than that, it's basically ready to go. As far as sleeping on it, this thing's ready to rock. I think I put like maybe 3 hours into this whole thing. It's amazing. I'm surprised how easy it is. I am going to put a finish on the wood, at least on the top, so it doesn't get stained, doesn't absorb moisture and all that kind of stuff. Probably a lacquer or urethane or something like that. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, please do like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. I tried to keep it moving. I didn't want to make it too long, so there's not a lot of detail in the process. So if you have any questions at all, please do leave a comment below, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. And also, if you figured out a better way to do stuff, let me know. I'd be curious. I have tried it out on several trips, and I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. It's so comfortable. I ended up using stuff I had. I had a closed cell foam mat, about a 1/2 inch thick, and then I also have like a 3-inch camping air mattress, and I put that on top of it. Super comfortable. Another great tip that I've learned from other people is you can go down and you can get like a memory foam mattress topper, like a 2-incher, cut that in half, stack it on top, and then you've got a 4-inch memory foam. Really nice and not very expensive. You can pick that up at a home improvement center, so that's also a good way to go. I did end up doing the drawer that I talked about, and there's a photo of me camping with the drawer deployed, so check that out. I find it really useful. I like it a lot. It does add a little weight, so when you're moving the platform in and out of the car, it's a little bit heavier than it would be otherwise. And I certainly could do it without it and just use the underneath the bed, that little area for storage. That would be fine also. But I do like it. The main thing that's really cool about this system is that you're totally stealthy. You can just roll into a campground late at night. There's nothing to set up. You just jump in your bed and you're comfortable. So that's super cool. You can also camp anywhere. You can disperse camp, boondock camp as we call it. And you can also camp in town, anywhere. You just pull over on a street that's quiet and just camp and nobody knows you're there. It's awesome. I have seen people do platforms for 2 people, but then your space is really limited. But you can put your stuff on top of the bed, and then when you camp, just throw it on top of the car on the roof or whatever. That works out. But it's probably best for 1 person. Then with 2 people, you can go for a rooftop tent, but then you've got all the setup, and it just gets a little messy. Good luck on your future camping trips. I hope you build a platform and enjoy it like I have. And until next time, thanks for watching.